When I turned 40, I decided to do something new, something I had never done before. Now, I have not run really a major race at all since probably junior high, where I joined track for about a minute and ran one race of hurdles, and the hurdles were taller than I was, and so that did not go over very well. Well, somehow I got it in my head that when I turned 40, I was gonna run a race, but my head is not quite screwed on right, and so I signed up for a triathlon. Yes, I know, running, biking, swimming, all three in the same race. Now, I know, not enough oxygen must be getting to my brain, but it wasn't a full triathlon, it was a mini tri. And it was up in the city of San Luis Obispo. So San Luis Obispo abbreviated is SLO. So the abbreviation is slow, and this is what they call their tri, slow tri. I know, it's a very unfortunate name for the serious athlete, but for me, it sounded just my speed. It was a 1 mile swim, a 15-mile bike ride, and a 5K run, which is about 3.1 miles. So I ran for a few weeks with my sister and was getting up my mileage. I thought I could probably do 3 miles. Now, I swam in our backyard pool in California, and I even had a stationary bike that I decided to pull out to train from. Solid training plan right there. Guys, I did not even own a real bike at the time. So the week before the race was supposed to happen, I was on social media asking if I could borrow a bike. Does anybody have a bike I can use? So my neighbor, who actually does legit triathlons, she had a mountain bike and a road bike with clips. Now, I had no idea that people would think it was a good idea to clip themselves down on their bikes, cement themselves in. Seriously, it's a nightmare. It's like a moving escape room scenario. How in the world would I get out of those things? Well, I chose the mountain bike, which I picked up the night before the race and rode it from one end of the neighborhood to the other. And then I put it in my garage and I put it in my car. That was the extent of getting used to riding that bike before my triathlon. Well, I was ready. I had only practiced on a stationary bike and done a stationary swim, but I was gonna go for it. So I arrived up there and I waited all morning before it was my turn, and I dove into the pool and I swam. This cool water was just refreshing. It was a hot day, and I started stroking through the water, and I love swimming, so this was a lot of fun for me to do. And I thought, if there's any part of the race I'm gonna do well at, it was this part. I was feeling strong in this way. Well, we had someone counting laps for us so that we didn't lose track, which was a good thing because I started getting tired, and the woman next to me, she pretty soon completely lapped me. And then I lost track of how many laps ahead of me that she was. She was a good 15 years older than me, and she was killing it. But that's okay. I was gonna pace myself. So when the lap counter said I was on my last lap, I was definitely ready to get out of that pool. So I finished and I tried to pull myself out of the pool like everybody else, and I was so exhausted, my muscles would not have it. I had to swim all the way over to the ladder and then climb out. Such an embarrassing way to start. Well, I pulled on my socks and my shoes and I jumped on my bike. And I gave myself a little pep talk. I mean, this was the second leg of the race, and the course started off going up a hill. Now, I had only ridden my stationary bike to prep for this 15-mile ride, but how hard could it be? I'd ridden around Mackinac Island that summer. Mackinac Island's like 8-9 miles. I thought I could do 2 of Mackinac Island, no problem. Well, I soon realized that my pedaling uphill was going almost constantly uphill. Like, where was this place? So it had all hills, uphill, both ways. I didn't understand it. I realized there was something very wrong. These hills went up and they never seemed to come down. I mean, for 15 miles. My Map My Ride app and my music that I had loaded to get me through this whole experience was trapped in my phone because I had no reception in this crazy, godforsaken hilly country that I was riding in. Well, I considered turning around after 5 miles of these constant hills, but instead I just got off my bike and I walked for a little bit, gave myself another pep talk, and then I got on my bike that I had borrowed, this borrowed mountain bike, for a road race. and there was no one around but me. I mean, seriously, I was like, did they cancel the race? Is everybody else done? But an occasional medic rode past me on a bike, and he seemed to feel the need to periodically check on me, and then he would just vanish. I had no idea where he went. Well, I hit mile 9 and I saw this long wooden fence that had various old leather boots upside down on the posts. Now, by this point in time, I could not feel my legs, and I'm pretty sure I started to hallucinate. I was pretty convinced that those boots must have belonged to people who had died out there doing this race, and I would be next. They would hang my non-clip shoes on that fence with all of those boots. Somehow my weak and weary legs got me all the way through that 15-mile mark, where I jumped off my bike and I began the last leg of this race. It was the 5K run. I was so ready to get off that bike ride from hell that a run sounded good. I don't love to run, but at this point, I was ready to do it. I was ready to run. So I jumped off and I started running in the direction that all the markers told us to head in. And I started seeing some of the officials start laughing at me and pointing to my head. And I realized I had not taken off my bike helmet. So I turn around, take off my bike helmet, throw it at my bike, and then just as I do that, I see my pool mate coming in next to me. Her bike was next to mine with a medal of completion around her neck. She was done! Yay, her! Well, I threw out a feeble congratulations and encouraged my feet to keep moving one step at a time and kept moving forward. Well, eventually, thankfully, I was back in civilization, and all my apps were working on my phone, so I could kick in some tracking program and listen to my tunes to encourage me to keep going. Slowly, I ran, but finally, the third and last part of the race was in sight, and I was there. Over the bridges and the steps and the sidewalks, on the path next to parks, over roads, on the sidewalks. And by the time I got to the hills at the end, I was determined I was going to finish this race. Well, as I jogged into the park where we were to end the race, the flags were blowing in the wind and the finish line was in sight, and they called my name. Lisa Toney, number 432. And I crossed the finish line. The invisible crowds went wild. Well, they gave me a medal in the end to commemorate, I think, that I did not die. That is what that medal represented. It was touch and go there for a while if I was going to be able to breathe any further after all that exhaustion. Well, pushing our bodies to the brink of exhaustion makes us so aware of our weakness, doesn't it? Have you ever been there? Pushed your body to a place of exhaustion and you're just like, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to recover from this. When you find yourself on that place of just feeling exhausted and weak, whether that's physically or maybe that's emotionally. Are you feeling exhausted from this season that we have been in of COVID-19, pandemics, quarantining, social distancing, wearing masks, not being able to go where you want to go, not being able to travel where you want to travel? And then with all the racial tensions in our country, all the things that people are ignited about right now, it can just make us feel exhausted and inadequate, that we feel weak. Have you ever had an injury or surgery that you've ever had to recover from, and the doctor tells you to take it easy? And it just gets so frustrating because your body can't do what you want it to do. A few years ago, I was running out the front porch of my parents' house. We were heading out for pizza with our family, and I was carrying my youngest daughter, who was just a baby at the time, and I wasn't paying attention, and I accidentally stepped down off the step wrong, twisted my foot, and broke it. Oh! You just feel that flash of pain go through your body, and you feel, bam, you just are so aware of the weakness that is inside you. One wrong step, and I had a broken foot that left me with weeks to deal with of consequences because of that injury. One misstep within us, one misstep can leave us with months of recovery. when we're weary and frustrated that our body doesn't do what you think it should be doing, what it used to be able to be doing. How about, I don't know, emotionally exhausting arguments? Have you ever been in one of those? Maybe the same argument that plays itself out in different forms, or the same issues with the same people, and it just seems to suck the life out of you. You go back and forth on issues, maybe the same issue, and let's just say it's being discussed fervently, repeatedly, and you go through those issues one more time. And it makes you feel weak, doesn't it? You feel exhausted and just weak. You don't feel strong in those moments. Well, maybe you're watching this today and you are in that place. You're like, man, Lisa, I do. I feel weak. I just don't feel as strong as I wish I was, or as strong as I used to be. Maybe you feel like you're even in worse shape than a fixer-upper. Maybe you feel like no one is going to put that kind of effort into this kind of broken down house that you feel like your body is in. Well, this is a series to remind us all that all things are possible with God. We are all fixer-uppers in need of the master builder. And here's the thing, you and I, we are not alone. There are so many people in the Bible who struggle to figure out this balance of weak and strong. Now, Samson is someone who is reported to be one of the strongest men that ever lived. But his life really was polarized by both weakness and strength. Now, let's take a little peek into Samson's backstory, because he came from a strong woman who the world said was pretty weak. Well, in this story, we are never told her name, but I can only imagine that her journey took her to the extremes of emotional, physical, spiritual, intellectual, and social weakness and strength. A woman, although, let's just say I'm not a very good one, because I'm barren, unable to conceive, to the disgrace of my husband, to our family, to our community. I feel weak, inadequate, even overlooked by God, since my sole responsibility is to produce an heir. But I don't know, perhaps it was best for my people, the Israelites. They had been conquered and now controlled by the Philistines. Now the Philistines, they do not know and worship God. They are just such a different people than my people are. They don't know that God is good and gracious. They just don't even know God. For 40 years, this has been our life of being captive by the Philistines under their rule. Then one day, just an ordinary day, I was just going about my daily work when a man, now, he wasn't really a regular man. I think he was an angel. I can only describe him as awesome in appearance. He walked right up to me and said that I was going to have a baby, that I should dedicate to God right from the womb. And this child was going to be chosen by God to lead our people, to lead the Israelites out from under the rule of the Philistines. Can you imagine if that really is true? But the angel wasn't finished. He said that this child was to be a man who was going to live under the Nazirite vow, set apart for God. He would not be able to cut his hair or drink or eat anything from a grape or even go near a dead body. What will God do with this boy that he is going to give me? Well, it all happened. I got pregnant and I gave birth to a boy, and his name was Samson. Now, we tried to raise him to honor God, but Samson was always stronger than the other kids. We tried to teach him to be careful and control that strength, but we didn't know what to do. And God said he would use him. So when Samson became a man, his strength continued to grow right before our eyes. Once, when he encountered a lion, Samson didn't even run away. He actually moved towards it. Who does that? We watched him tear apart this lion with his bare hands. Who can do that? I was shocked. I actually was a little in awe and honestly just a little bit afraid of him. I mean, we had seen such might, such physical strength. And as strong as Samson was, he was also so weak when it came to the ladies. Now, a mother, she knows her child, and his eye caught the attention of a Philistine woman, a woman that he eventually married. And this broke my heart because it was against the protests of his father and I. It was against what God wanted. Now, she eventually betrayed him, and in his anger, he killed 30 men. He set fire to the Philistine fields. His rage was as strong as his hands. And of course, the Philistines demanded retribution against my son, Samson. It is a story of violence and death. But God did raise up my son to free us from the horrid Philistines. So as brutal as my son could be, the Philistines, they were even worse. They were bullies, they were brutal, they were horrible bullies who kept our people enslaved. But our people, the Israelites, were thankful that we had such a strong warrior and leader like Samson to protect us and defend us. Samson led us for 20 years in military battles. His great strength and his reputation of might matched no other. God made Samson strong in might. Now, I still remember that day that Delilah caught his eye. Samson was powerless to her beauty. She had power over him. He would do anything for that woman. He loved her. Now, I don't know if Delilah ever loved my son. I do know that she loved money and she loved influence. Money had power over her. She took a bribe from the Philistines to discover the secret to Samson's strength. He had never revealed the secret to his strength. Even with his arrogance and his temper, Samson had honored God's command to not cut his hair, for therein lied his strength. But Delilah was not only beautiful, she was smart. She was persistent, and she wore him down. And he finally revealed to her that the secret of his strength was his uncut hair. And so one night, while he slept, she went and got a knife, and she cut my son's hair. She cut off his might. And as those locks of hair fell away from Samson, so did his obedience to God. Samson had never been like everyone else. He had never been an ordinary man. And now he was, in a heart-wrenching moment that we'd never thought would come. Samson's strength was gone. When he ran to battle the Philistines, as he had done hundreds of times, although this time he was overtaken by the Philistines. He had only the strength of a regular man after his hair had been cut, and so the Philistines were easily able to capture him. They gouged out his eyes, and then they enslaved him. Now, he had been blind to God's direction. He had been blind to his responsibility. He had been blind to his vow to the Lord. He had been blind to his weakness. And now he was forever blind. Samson had only ever known strength in the Lord. He had never known the limitations of human strength. That must have been both so exhilarating, but also so lonely. You know, sometimes we don't know what God has given us until it is gone. I can only imagine the conversations that Samson had with the Lord as he sat alone, embarrassed and ashamed, weak, captured by his enemy. As he sat in that cell alone, probably feeling abandoned. But God reminded him that he did not abandon Samson, even when he hit rock bottom. God did not walk away. He did not forget Samson. God did not gloat or mock Samson. The Philistines sure did. But God remained with the one he had called, even when Samson made a mistake. I am so thankful that this is the kind of God that we have, that when we are weak, God is still strong. When we are weak, God's strength is what gives us strength. God's strength allows us to start again, to stand up when we've fallen, and to step out in faith when he calls. Now, while imprisoned, Samson's hair began to slowly grow back. And as his hair began to grow, Samson's faith also began to grow. Samson was brought out for a Philistine festival. One more time, he was to be mocked. He was to be the entertainment for the evening, the strong man mocked. The mighty warrior who had fallen, ridiculed, laughed at, scorned. But Samson, he leaned into God one more time. He acknowledged his weakness. He prayed and he asked God for strength. He asked for the strength that he once knew as his own, but now he knew without a doubt. He knew that it was might that came only from the Lord. Can you hear him? Can you almost hear him saying, "My past is dead, strength lies ahead. In God I am strong, to the future I belong." And God, he reached out to Samson and he renewed his strength. He took a broken, betrayed, and humiliated man and he turned his weakness into the strength of the Lord. Now, Samson's last feat of strength brought down that temple and buried the enemy of our people in the rubble. His death brought the freedom of our people. Now, sometimes I don't realize how dependent upon God I am. Sometimes our past is what keeps us weak, unable to move forward in God's strength. God was there for Samson. And God, he is also there for you when you feel weak. You know, I think God actually delights in this process of taking weak fixer-uppers like me and you, like Samson, like Samson's mom, and helping them rebuild. There's another man in the Bible, in the New Testament, Paul. He's one of the main writers of the Bible, and he knew this firsthand as well. When we're first introduced to Paul, he is one of the strongest persecutors of Christians. After he met Jesus and surrendered his life to him, that one-time strength of being a strong persecutor must have made him feel so weak and insufficient to become the leader of the Christian movement. Have you ever wondered how Paul ended up in this position in the first place? I mean, God must have been up in heaven looking down at the 12 disciples who were filled with doubt and fear and indecision, and he must have just shaken his head and said, "We need someone else on the team. We need someone else to go in." And so he looked at Paul, who was had a past of where he had been against Jesus. He didn't believe him, he didn't trust him, he didn't follow him. But this man, Paul, he had passion and leadership and strategy. He had some incredible strengths. And God must have looked down from heaven and said, "Yep, that's the one. That's the one who we need on our team." Can you imagine all of heaven thinking, "God, are you sure? Are you sure about this? He kind of hates Jesus right now." And God was like, "Yep, he's the one. You just watch what I can do." See, God, he is powerful. For nothing is impossible with our God. So God reached down from heaven and he opened Paul's heart and his mind and his eyes to the reality of who Jesus really was. And as Paul believed and he dropped away from his old life and stepped into new, Paul's strengths became supercharged when he yielded them to God. And his weaknesses reminded him that he was dependent 100% upon God. In his own strength, he may have been effective, but in God's strength, he found a might, a power, a strength that went far beyond his own. See, the world wants us to escape our weakness. The world wants us to pretend it doesn't exist or turn away from it. But Jesus doesn't offer an escape from our weakness. Jesus rather offers endurance in weakness through his power. See, Paul wrote in Ephesians 1:18-19, "I pray that the eyes of your heart may be enlightened, in order that you may know the hope to which he has called you, the riches of his glorious inheritance in his holy people and his incomparable great power for us who believe. His incomparable great power. Highlight that verse, star it, underline it, memorize it. Incomparable great power. Do you need that today? I need that. Who needs his incomparable great power in your life? For those who are followers of Jesus, that power is given to us. It is incomparable to any other power that this world has ever known. It is like anything else that we can experience. It is rare, it is precious, it is mighty, and it only comes from our God, who revealed this power through our resurrected Lord. And Paul says that power is the same as the mighty strength he exerted when he raised Christ up from the dead and seated him at his right hand in the heavenly realms, far above all rule and authority, power and dominion, and every name that is invoked, not only in the present age, but also in the one to come. God is mighty. He is powerful. He is stronger. He is stronger than anything else in this world. He is stronger than pandemics and quarantine and civil disrest. Anything else in this world. He is stronger. My past is dead. Strength lies ahead. In Jesus I am strong. To the future I belong. So how do we live in the reality of this strength? Well, when we are confronted with an obstacle, how can we focus on this? How can we see this as an opportunity for God to be strong in us instead? See, often we talk about the obstacle as insurmountable, but what if we talk about the obstacle with hopeful expectation? I will trust God to show up. I will trust God to be strong for me in this situation. What if we start to look for God to show up in places all around us? And in other people to remind us that God is alive, that God is working, that God is strong. Strong for them and strong for us. This was true for Samson. This was true for his mom. This was true for Paul. And Jesus, he surprised this world with resurrection power. God showed up with unexpected joy in strong, bold proclamation of power, strength, and life. And he says, here is my resurrection power. Live in it, know it, experience it, proclaim it. Resurrection power. What would it look like for you to lean into God's strength in a fresh new way today? What would it look like for you to proclaim, my past, it is dead. Strength lies ahead, for in Jesus I am strong, and to the future I belong.